Hello everyone, welcome to today's class, and our title today is Company Pranks Its Own Employees. Let's move on to language focus. 1번. As it turns out, the company was not really planning on firing its stressed out employees. So as you can see, we have highlighted as it turns out. Now use as it turns out to express that a situation has been found to be different from what was believed or anticipated. So, how can we explain as it turns out? As it turns out는 어떤 상황이 예상하거나 미뤘던 것과 다르게 드러났을 때 사용하는 표현입니다. 이 구문은 그 상황의 결과가 예상과 다르다는 것을 강조할 때 사용됩니다. So, as an example, I didn't think Hassan would like Osaka food, but as it turns out, he's a big fan of okonomiyaki. So, 나는 하산이 오사카 음식을 좋아할 줄 몰랐는데 알고 보니 그는 오코노미야키의 큰 팬이었어. I love okonomiyaki. I love takoyaki better though. Or, we didn't expect to get much response, but as it turned out, thousands of people called us. 우리는 많은 반응을 기대하지 않았는데 알고 보니 수천 명이 우리에게 전화를 했어요. Alright, so as it turns out. Alright, let's look at 2번 now. 2번. This author, for one, would never have heard of them if they hadn't pulled this stunt. So we're looking at for one. Use for one before mentioning one person or thing whom something is true. It is similar meaning to give just one example. So, for one은 어떤 것이 사실은 사람이나 사물을 언급하기 전에 사용하여 하나의 예를 들자면 이라는 의미를 전달합니다. 이 표현은 특정한 예를 들 때 사용되며 그 예가 하늘일 뿐임을 강조합니다. So, example. Michael, for one, was not surprised by the company's announcement. 마이클은 예를 들면 회사의 발표에 놀라지 않았어요. Or, I, for one, wish we had an Indian restaurant closer to our office. 저는 예를 들면 우리 사무실 근처에 인도 음식점이 있었으면 좋겠어요. Alright, now let's look at the language focus quiz. 1번. As it turns out, is not very good. So if we scroll back up, as it turns out, so use as it turns out to express that a situation has been found to be different from what was believed to be anticipated. So as it turns out, 어떤 상황이 예상하거나 믿었던 것과 다르게 드러났을 때 사용하는 표현입니다. 이 구문은 그 상황의 결과가 예상과 다르다는 것을 강조할 때 사용됩니다. So, as it turns out, is not a very good So let's say Squid Game Season 2 was not a very good drama series. So, 알고 보니 오징어 게임 시즌 2는 그다지 좋은 드라마 시리즈가 아니었어요. Or 2번, I thought, but as it turns out, that's not exactly true. I thought he was a good worker, but as it turns out, that's not exactly true. 나는 그가 좋은 일꾼이라고 생각했지만 알고 보니 그게 꼭 사실은 아니었어요. 3번. For one, is having a hard time this year. So for one, use for one before mentioning one person or thing for whom something is true. It is similar meaning to give just one example. So for one, 어떤 것이 사실은 사람이나 사물을 언급하기 전에 사용하여 하나의 예를 들자면 이라는 의미를 전달합니다. 이 표현은 특정한 예를 들 때 사용되며 그 예가 하나일 뿐임을 강조합니다. So let's say simply Richard for one is not having a good year. 예를 들면 리치드는 올해 힘든 시간을 보내고 있습니다. Or I for one do not agree with everything she said. So 예를 들면 나는 그녀가 말한 모든 것에 동의하지 않아요. Alright, now let's look at the further discussion. 1번. Do you think there is a right and a wrong way to fire employees? If so, what is the right way? 직원들을 해고하는데 올바른 방법과 잘못된 방법이 있다고 생각하나요? 그렇다면 올바른 방법은 무엇인가요? It just depends on what the person did to get fired. I mean, when you get fired, it's usually because the employee did something wrong. If you get... There's a difference between getting fired, getting laid off, getting... let's say... getting let go... not being not having a contract extension, etc., etc., etc. So fired is usually the employee's problem. So is there a better, a right way and a wrong way? I guess most people would well, as a person who's never fired anyone, I guess the right way would be to do it in a mature manner and just say, listen, you've done this wrong, so you're no longer needed at this company. And the wrong way would be to yell and kick and scream and do whatever. But yeah, I think it's always usually in the hands of the employees that they get fired rather than the hands of the employers. That's not always the case. The employers sometimes fire people without thinking as well. But usually, if you get fired, it's usually because the employees have done something wrong. 2번. What do you think of the saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity? Why do people say this? 나쁜 홍보는 없다. 는 말에 대해 어떻게 생각하나요? 사람들이 왜 이런 말을 할까요? That only applies to what I would say I think that only really applies to people, not so much companies, especially companies that sell things. Because, example, bad publicity for celebrities, bad publicity for influencers, bad publicity for politicians can sometimes actually help their platform. So I think when it comes to publicity for a person, there's no such thing as bad publicity. I agree with that in some way. But when it comes to companies, I think, bad publicity is pretty, damaging towards the companies. And obviously they should avoid it at all costs. But that doesn't mean that the company will, drastically, lose a lot of money, because there's always going to be people out there that want a job. Example, Amazon is supposedly one of the worst places to work at, but yet people still work for Amazon. They have very bad publicity, but they still have a lot of employees. There you go. All right, so that wraps it up for today, and I'll see you on the next class.
In the spotlight.
In the spotlight.
Part ways.
Part ways.
Toxic.
Toxic.
Sue.
Sue.
Leave.
Leave.
Pull a stunt.
Pull a stunt.